Breaking news. Yes, breaking news that shook even the walls of silence. A verdict that the world never thought it would hear. Joseph Kabila, former president of Congo, a man once called untouchable, a man once seen as one of the most powerful in Central Africa. Today, he is sentenced to death. I watched as the courtroom gasped. I watched as men and women who had once bowed their heads in fear lifted their eyes in disbelief. I saw journalists, those same journalists who for years wrote lies to protect him, rush like hungry vultures to spread the story, their voices shaking as they read the sentence aloud. And within hours, this shock traveled, not quietly, not secretly, but openly. Across Africa, across Europe, across the entire globe. But listen to me carefully, my brothers, my sisters. This moment, this verdict, this thunder in Kinshasa, it is not about one man. This is not about Joseph Kabila alone. The world trembles because they know exactly what comes next. They tremble because this is not the end. This is the beginning of the unraveling. And I say this to you openly with no fear. I am Captain Ibrahim Traoré. I will not remain silent, because what has just happened is not only a verdict, it is a warning. It is a sign. It is the future of Africa itself. The shock that echoed in silence. They told you this day would never come. They told you that Joseph Kabila, ruler of Congo, was untouchable. They told you that African leaders could do anything, steal, kill, betray, and still sleep peacefully under the guard of foreign armies. They told you that no African court would dare challenge the fortress of power. They told you no judge would risk his life to put pen to paper against men who had dined with the West, who had walked the red carpets of Paris, who had posed in photo ops with American presidents. But today, the gavel came down, and the verdict shook the earth. The sound was not just wood striking wood. It was the sound of chains breaking. It was the sound of walls cracking. It was the sound of history changing course. Joseph Kabila, sentenced to death. And the world trembles, they say. But I ask you, my brothers and...
Can you imagine this? A former president, once untouchable, once feared across Central Africa, now standing in court sentenced to death. The silence in that courtroom wasn't weakness. It was history changing. The world never believed this day would come. But today, Africa proved them wrong.
Sisters, why should the world tremble at the fall of one man? No, the world should tremble because this is only the beginning, beyond one man. This verdict is not about Joseph Kabila. Do not let them reduce it to that. This is about a machine. This is about an entire system. A system that created him. A system that taught him that African blood is cheap. A system that told him, take what you want, sell what you wish, and we will protect you as long as the gold flows to us, as long as the oil flows to us, as long as the diamonds pass through our banks. It is the same system that put crowns on weak men and called them kings. It is the same system that placed pens in the hands of traitors and told them to sign away rivers, forests, and futures. It is the same system that smiled in public and plotted in private, that said partnership but meant plunder. Kabila was not an accident. He was the design. He was the product. And now, his sentence is not a judgment of a single man. It is a message. A message to every president who believes foreign palaces will shield them. A message to every general who believes guns given by outsiders will protect them. A message to every banker who believes Western accounts will save them. That message is simple. Africa is no longer your playground. Shockwaves across the world. Do you see how the earth shook? In Paris, I hear the whispers. Too extreme, they mutter, as if Africa asking for justice is extremism. In Washington, I hear the panic. This will destabilize Africa, they cry, as if Africa is not already destabilized by their hands. And in London, I see the nervous hands, the pale faces, the shaking voices. How could Africans dare put a former president on trial? Let me answer them here before all of you. You destabilized Africa when you carved it up like a feast at Berlin in 1884. You destabilized Africa when you armed rebels and called it foreign aid. You destabilized Africa when you sent missionaries with one hand and mercenaries with the other. You destabilized Africa when you stole coltan for your phones, uranium for your bombs, gold for your banks. You destabilized Africa when you said, our oil is your collateral, our people your labor, our future your property. Do not lecture us about stability, because today Africa is not falling apart. Africa is rising, and the tremble you feel in your cities, the unease in your parliaments, the fear in your eyes, it is not the collapse of Africa. It is the collapse of your control. I stand before you not as a soldier in uniform, but as a son of this soil. I stand before you not with medals, but with the scars of struggle. I am not here as a commander, but as the voice of a generation that refuses to kneel. This verdict, the sentence against Kabila, is not about revenge. It is about rebirth. It is about a continent that has been silent too long, finally speaking. It is about a people who have suffered too long, finally standing. It is about the millions whose names will never be written in history books, but whose tears have filled rivers, whose sweat has watered fields, whose blood has marked battlefields. And hear me, Africa, if justice can be done in Kinshasa, then justice can be done in Dakar. If justice can be done in Kinshasa, it can be done in Lagos, in Nairobi, in Khartoum, in Bamako, in Ouagadougou, in every corner of this great continent. No leader is too sacred, no chair is too permanent, no palace is too strong. Africa's new dawn has no room for betrayal. I say this not just to presidents, not just to generals, not just to ministers. I say this to you, the people. The forgotten, the ignored, the silenced, the farmers in the fields, the mothers in the markets, the students in the classrooms, the workers in the mines. This victory is yours. This verdict is yours. For too long they told you that justice was a myth. For too long they told you that men like Kabila could not fall. For too long they told you that Africa could not rise. But today, the impossible has happened. And tomorrow, the unimaginable will follow. Brothers and sisters, let us not deceive ourselves. Joseph Kabila did not rise from the soil of Congo by accident. He was not a storm that came uninvited. He was a product, a design, a carefully crafted tool. And if you want to understand why his fall shakes the world, you must understand how men like him were built. You must remember the long chain of betrayals that stretched from colonial palaces to African capitals. The ghost of Berlin, 1884. It began in Berlin, yes, Berlin, 1884, in the grand halls of Europe. Men who had never seen the Congo River, men who could not name Timbuktu or Ouagadougou, sat with maps and knives. They carved Africa like meat at a banquet. They drew lines across deserts, mountains, rivers, with no thought of the people who lived there. And when they were done, they smiled, shook hands, and called it civilization. Civilization? What they called civilization was slavery with a new mask. What they called progress was plunder wrapped in contracts. What they called development was destruction wearing a suit. From that moment, Africa was not a land to them. It was a prize. Its kings became pawns. Its gold became their reserves. Its children became their labor. And Congo, oh Congo, became the bleeding heart of this theft. Leopold II of Belgium turned Congo into his personal business. Rubber, ivory, gold. He extracted it with chains, with whips, with mutilations that haunt us to this day. Millions died. And yet Europe called it a success. The birth of puppets. When the age of direct colonialism ended, they promised freedom. They promised independence. Flags were raised. Anthems were sung. But the chains had not been broken. They had only been polished. They replaced colonial governors with African faces, but behind those faces stood the same Western banks, the same Western armies, the same Western interests. These new rulers were not leaders. They were puppets, and the hands that pulled their strings sat in Paris, in Washington, in London. They gave them loans, not to build schools, not to build hospitals, but to keep them indebted. They gave them weapons, not to protect their people, but to suppress them. They gave them praise, not for justice, but for obedience. And every time a leader tried to rise...
This isn't just about Joseph Kabila. No, this is about a system that fed on Africa's blood for over a century. A system that crowned traitors and called them leaders. The gavel didn't just strike wood that day. It cracked the walls of betrayal. It broke the chains of silence. The world trembles because they know this is only the beginning.
For his people, he was cut down. Patrice Lumumba in Congo, Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso, Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana. They were assassinated, toppled, silenced, not because they failed, but because they dared to succeed without permission. The creation of Kabila. Joseph Kabila was born from this poisoned soil. He was not raised to serve his people. He was trained to serve the system. He was taught that leadership is not sacrifice, but privilege. That power is not responsibility, but wealth. That politics is not about protecting the people, but about protecting contracts signed in foreign languages, sealed in foreign capitals. He became what they wanted him to be. A man who would smile in public while his people wept in private. A man who would stand at international conferences talking about growth while children starved outside the very halls of those conferences. A man who would fly in private jets while hospitals lacked electricity. A man who believed that as long as the West was pleased, the suffering of his own people did not matter. This is why his trial is bigger than him. Because when Kabila stands condemned, it is not just one man in the dock. It is the system that produced him, the poison of betrayal, Do you know what betrayal looks like? It looks like villages without water, while gold is shipped abroad. It looks like soldiers unpaid, while presidents collect millions in development aid. It looks like mothers giving birth on dirt floors, while leaders sign oil contracts in five-star hotels. Betrayal is not just corruption. It is an entire architecture of deception. It is leaders pretending to serve while actually selling. It is parliaments passing laws written by foreigners. It is schools teaching children to admire the very nations that enslaved their ancestors. This betrayal has lasted generations, and each generation of traitors was rewarded. They were given Swiss accounts, French villas, American bodyguards, and their people were given hunger, war, and graves. And yet, despite all of this, the African people endure. Despite the chains, we walk. Despite the wounds, we rise. Despite the betrayals, we remember. They thought they erased Lumumba when they killed him, but his words live in every African heart. They thought they erased Sankara when they shot him, but his spirit rides in every African struggle. They thought they silenced Nkrumah with coups, but his dream of a united Africa grows stronger every day. The people endure because truth cannot be killed. The people endure because justice may be delayed, but it cannot be denied forever. The people endure because history has a memory, and it is long. And now, that memory has awakened. It awakened in Kinshasa. It awakened in the verdict against Kabila. And it will not sleep again, so let the world tremble. Not because Joseph Kabila has fallen, but because the system that made him is collapsing. Let the banks tremble, for the accounts they kept secret are now under the eyes of the people. Let the corporations tremble, for the contracts signed in shadows are now dragged into the light. Let the presidents tremble, for the palaces they built on betrayal now shake beneath their feet. This is the warning. The age of puppets is ending. The age of lions is beginning, and Africa will no longer kneel. I hear the whispers in Paris. Too extreme, they say, as if justice for the African people is extremism. I hear the panic in Washington. This will destabilize Africa, they cry, as if Africa has not already been destabilized by their own hands for more than a century. And in London, I see the pale faces, the trembling lips, the unease in their parliaments. How could Africans dare put a former president on trial? Let me answer you now, before all of Africa and before the world. You destabilized Africa when you carved it up like meat at Berlin in 1884. You destabilized Africa when you drew lines through kingdoms, families, and tribes, and then called it order. You destabilized Africa when you stole millions of hands and shipped them across the ocean as slaves, then pretended to abolish slavery while replacing it with colonialism. You destabilized Africa when you armed rebels, funded coups, and called it policy. You destabilized Africa when you sent missionaries with one hand and mercenaries with the other. You destabilized Africa when you stole coltan for your phones, uranium for your bombs, diamonds for your rings, cocoa for your chocolate, and left nothing but poverty behind. You destabilized Africa when you said, "Your oil is our collateral. Your gold is our bank reserve. Your future is our playground." And today you dare to lecture us about stability? No, gentlemen, no, ladies. It is not Africa that is destabilized today. It is you. It is your grip. It is your illusion of control. It is your empire of theft that trembles. For centuries, your power rested not only on your weapons, not only on your banks, but on our fear. You told our leaders, "Do not resist. Do not question. Do not dream. If you obey, you will live in comfort. If you resist, you will die." And too many obeyed. Too many knelt. Too many sold their souls for crumbs from your tables. But today, in Kinshasa, that fear collapsed. When Joseph Kabila heard his sentence, the silence that followed was not weakness. It was freedom. The courtroom gasped, not because they feared, but because they were free from fear at last. And I tell you this, when one people lose fear, others will follow. Today, Kinshasa. Tomorrow, Ouagadougou. Next week, Bamako. Next month, Dakar. Next year, all of Africa. The fear you depended on is gone. And when fear dies, empires collapse. To the Western corporations and to the corporations who hide behind governments, who think their hands are clean because they wear suits instead of uniforms, I see you. Your oil companies that drill into our land while poisoning our rivers. Your mining giants that strip our soil for gold, for cobalt, for coltan, while our children breathe dust and die of hunger. Your banks that hide the stolen billions of corrupt presidents and then lecture Africa about corruption. I tell you, your time is ending. The contracts signed in darkness will be torn in daylight. The wealth you extracted will no longer flow freely. The people you treated as disposable labor are awake, and they will no longer serve you. You tremble not because of Kabila's death sentence. You tremble because you know that the age of plunder is over. To the African elites, and now I turn to you. Yes, you, the African elites who sit in palaces built with foreign loans. You, the ministers who sign deals you do not understand in languages you cannot read. You, the generals who train in Western academies only to return and suppress your own people. You, the presidents who beg for aid while your citizens beg for food. Listen to me well. Do not sleep comfortably tonight. Do not imagine that your foreign bodyguards will protect you when your own people rise. Do not imagine that your Swiss accounts will save you when your nations crumble. Do not imagine that your photo ops with foreign presidents will shield you when justice comes knocking. Because the tide has turned, the people have awakened, and the verdict against Joseph Kabila is only the first wave. Those who betrayed Africa for oil contracts, your names are known. Those who sold uranium for crumbs, your names are known. Those who allowed their people to die so they could dine with IMF chiefs, your names are known. Those who let their people starve while they posed with smiles at UN banquets, your names are known. Those who opened their borders to foreign soldiers while closing their ears to their own people's cries, your names are known. And justice is coming, not the justice of foreign courts, not the justice of Western lawyers, but the justice of your own people, the justice of the continent, the justice of history itself. And to the people of Africa I say, do not wait. Do not wait for permission to demand justice. Do not wait for foreign observers to certify your courage. Do not wait for elites to grow a conscience. They will not. Stand tall. Rise together. Remember, justice is possible. Today you saw it in Kinshasa. Tomorrow you will see it in Ouagadougou, in Bamako, in Accra, in Addis Ababa. They told you for too long that you are weak, that you cannot stand against power, that you must forgive and forget, even as your children starved. But no more. No more. Today is not the end. Today is the beginning. And from this beginning, a new Africa will rise. So I stand before you tonight, not as one man, but as the echo of millions. I stand here not to mourn the fall of Joseph Kabila, but to declare the fall of fear, the fall of betrayal, the fall of the system that birthed him. This is not the end of a story. It is the beginning of one. A story where no leader is above justice. A story where no palace is too strong, no throne too permanent, no betrayal too hidden. A story where Africa does not whisper its pain anymore. Africa roars its truth. Let the world tremble today because one man has fallen. But tomorrow they will tremble because an entire continent has risen. From Ouagadougou to Kinshasa, from Bamako to Addis Ababa, from Dakar to Johannesburg. Africa is rising, and I say this to you clearly, so no one can ever twist my words. We are no longer colonies. We are no longer puppets. We are no longer slaves to debt, to corruption, to fear. We are the sons and daughters of warriors. We are the heirs of kingdoms that Europe tried to erase. We are the voice of the future that no empire can silence. And we are ready. So let the banks hear me. Let the corporations hear me. Let the governments of the West hear me. Let every trader hiding in palaces hear me. Let every young African standing in the streets hear me. This is Africa's hour. This is Africa's dawn. This is Africa's revolution. The verdict in Kinshasa is not just a gavel falling. It is the sound of chains breaking. It is the sound of empires collapsing. It is the sound of a continent awakening. And no matter how much they tremble, no matter how much they resist, they cannot stop what has already begun.
From Kinshasa to Bamako, from Dakar to Johannesburg, Africa is rising. This verdict is not the end. It is the dawn of a new era. No palace too strong, no throne too permanent, no betrayal too hidden. The world trembles not because one man has fallen, but because an entire continent has awakened.